Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our online reflection for this week here on Liberton Kirk Online. It's great as always to be with you, and it's even more better that the weather is getting much warmer and the days are getting much brighter. Signs of good things to come, indeed. Anyway, we're going to be continuing with our investigation into David's Psalms, and we're looking into Psalm 32. Now, David composes this psalm as a means of contemplation and reflection, and it's meant to be guided for those who read these words as a source of wisdom. So, how's about we encounter that wisdom together as we look to the first verse of Psalm 32? So, let's read together Psalm 32, verse 1. It says this: Blessed is the one whose transgressions are forgiven, whose sins are covered. I'm reflecting back to school and I'm picturing myself back at my own school desk with all the stationery neatly lined up before me as class was taking place. And all the time and time again, I would always hear some of my classmates ask me, right beside me, if they could borrow a rubber. And if my eraser was nowhere to be seen because somebody else was using it, they would then proceed to ask the person that was sitting next to them, or even more so, from the teacher themselves. Talk about being prepared for your first class on a Monday morning. But sometimes I might even glance over one of my friends who, whenever they made a mistake on their paper, would all of a sudden pull out this white bottle with a top that you can turn and pull out. And then he was able to cover whatever mistake that he made whenever he wrote in pen. So, as intrigued as I was, I asked him, "What's that you've got?" And he would show me this white bottle, and then I read the label and it said, Tipex, rapid correction, extra coverage. Now, I must confess, as much as I love stepping into these stationery stores and gaze in amazement with all the stationery that was on offer, I must confess I've never bought a bottle of Tipex before because I've never needed to use it. However, the principle behind this unique stationery item got me intrigued and thinking about what it means to restart and try again, covering all of those innocent mistakes that we make whenever we try to communicate something or answer something. That idea that a mistake, once made in permanent ink, doesn't have to be the final word, that something can cover it, that there can be a fresh start. Thinking about that image of Tipex or even the eraser, what does that look like for us in our lives? Of all the sins that we commit, of all the mistakes that we do. But more importantly, who can be the one who can cover up and make brand new again? For God to place his pen and continue to write the story of our lives that he wishes for us to experience. Well, as we just heard, when we hear from David in one of his contemplative psalms within the Old Testament, he starts writing this 32nd psalm with some profound words, words that are striking. The one who is made joyful is the one whose mistakes and sins have been made forgiven, and ultimately, there is no blemish to be seen anymore. But here's the important distinction that David in this song wants to make to us. It is not the flawless person who is called blessed, but the forgiven one. Not the one who has never slipped up, but the one whose failure has been met with mercy. Ultimately, God is always in the business, and indeed, it's in his real desire to forgive sinners. And when we discuss why God would always be in that business to forgive, well, it's because that it is in his very nature, his own loving nature, to do so. When we think about it, indeed, further back, he announced this to Moses and to the nation of Israel when they made a fresh start upon a new journey. He, in this instance, for David, reminds him that what forgiveness and remissions of sins can look like in the heart. And ultimately, journeying to Calvary, Christ himself would demonstrate what it vividly looks like to become the coverage and cleansing for all of God's people when he finds himself upon the brink of death upon a cross. That would symbolize what it means to dramatically show all of humanity what forgiveness is. So, what we witness is when forgiveness is freely given, it provides that joy, happiness, and relief once more. But just like how Tipp-Ex, or indeed anything that can cover and heal, perhaps another metaphor can be a plaster that we place on ourselves, on the ones that we love, in order to restore and revive once again. A question becomes twofold for us. If God is actively seeking the hearts of us and is willing to forgive, cleanse, and giving us the opportunity to start again, how do we have the courage to step in faith to confess and allow God to place his hand on us and indeed the whole world to heal and restore once more? How might we extend that same mercy to others, covering their faults with grace rather than just exposing them with broken ink that can stain and tarnish? For as we journey on this Lent season to the cross, what helps us answer those deep questions is ultimately fulfilled in that image of the Son of God, placing himself above the ground to demonstrate how sacrifice provides that much needed impetus for us to go out and live differently, to forgive as we have been forgiven, just as Christ's ultimate fulfillment on that cross demonstrates, to love as we have been loved, so much and so wide that his arms show how big his love was for all of humanity upon that wood, and to become visible signs of that covering grace, because in Christ and with Christ, what he will demonstrate upon that Good Friday is that mercy and forgiveness will ultimately be that final word. God bless you. Know that you are with Christ in this Lent season. And until we meet again, take care and God bless.